another episode on the show. I'm so happy to have you guys back. Audience, I've missed you guys a whole lot. And as you guys know, we only bring the best of guests to the show. And once again, today we have a very, very special guest. Our guest today is Michael Mandaville, an award-winning novelist, filmmaker, producer, and entrepreneur whose career has spanned some of Hollywood's biggest productions and best-selling thrillers. With a master's degree in professional writing from USC from USC, Michael has worked behind the
Yes.
scenes on Michael has worked behind the scenes on acclaimed films in including Taken 2, Taken 3, American History, X, Above Suspicion, and many others. He's also the he's also directed feature films, written award-winning screenplays, and authored the best-selling Stealing Thunder techno thriller series, which reached number one of on Amazon and won the Thrillspy Award. From Hollywood filmmaking to writing gripping mysteries and thrillers, our guest today brings decades of experience, fascinating stories, and unique insights into storytelling, creativity, and the future of entertainment. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Dominic. Great to be here.
All right, thank you so much. And I hope you enjoyed that introduction.
I did. Thank you very much. It was very kind.
Okay, so you grew up surrounded by the film industry. Tell us what first sparked your passion for storytelling.
Well, in the initial stages of my childhood, my Aunt Molly worked as you pointed out, in the film industry. She worked at 20th Century Fox. And as a result of working at 20th Century Fox, she was the story consultant there. And to keep me busy, my mother actually was ill during a period of that time. So my aunt would pick me up in her car and take me over to the studio. And of course, she had books around, kids' books initially. And then I got very good at reading. And so she would give me better books, more like Alexander Dumas, The Three Musketeers, or Robinson Crusoe by Defoe, or other kinds of books that were in this kind of moderate level. And then I grew quickly into reading those books and many others, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old in that era. And that quickly developed into a passion. Besides, then you would look back and see, okay, well, I was in a number of films when I was a kid. She put me in as an extra. And so between the two would be, here's the storytelling, and over here is the magic and mystery of movies. And so that kind of started me on the path of, I want to figure out how to do this, figure out how to make something happen in the film industry. And so that was the initial event, was my Aunt Molly. Very smart lady, very driven, rose to prominence in an industry dominated a great deal by men in the late 30s and up into the 70s. And so she was quite an inspiration to me.
Okay, Michael, thank you so much. So you worked on films like Taking and American History X. What are some behind the scenes lessons those production taught you?
Well, in a lot of ways, you are dealing with a lot of people that are very high driven artists. You are dealing with a challenging structure in which these artists are going to work. And it has to be a responsive mechanism. So some people work in a very organized fashion, a very well considered fashion, planning, etc., and others don't. They're much more intuitive. And as a result of that intuition and spontaneity, you need to be flexible. So I think the key element I've learned from anything in the film production is you can have a plan, but at the same time, don't let that interfere with spontaneous inspiration. And at the same time, don't let it interfere with the brainstorming that brings on that inspiration and new direction within the context of a structure. And I think there's like a famous World War II saying of General Eisenhower, which is when you're making a film, certainly you feel like you're going into battle in some ways. I know it's a very strained metaphor given that you shouldn't have any casualties on a movie, but at the same time, all the urgency, the logistics, the personalities, the drive to complete tasks and deadlines is all there. And the idea is that you could plan the battle, but don't battle the plan, meaning you're going to get new input and you have to respond to it. And the same applies, interestingly enough, Dominic, with story. And when you have a story, and you do writing as well, don't you? Are you a writer?
Yes, yes, I do.
So you may plan to say, here's the plot line for a particular story I'm working on. And all of a sudden, one of your characters starts talking. And in a way, a voice that comes from inside you, the writer, that allows you to take it in a new direction, or at least a unexpected direction. And the question is, well, do you clamp down on that voice, or do you let the creativity blossom from within you and outward and respond to it? So I think it's a marvelous give and take between the two, both in the film industry and storytelling.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael. So, I'm just curious, how were you able to work on these films? Like, how did this? That's a lot to me, taking American history exam. How did this become possible?
For me to work on those particular films,
Yes.
well, on American History X, I had started working with the producer. His name was John Morrissey, and I'd started working with him in a decade earlier, and we got along very well. Worked hard on a modest budget production of his, and consequently, he called me for American History X and Havoc that would work with them, him on those projects. So when he was working on American History X, had to bring it in for a certain number with New Line Cinema. He thought I might be good with that because there's always been a difference between the independent filmmaking mentality and a studio one. And the studio one has, I wouldn't say unlimited money, but usually more. And the indie one is the opposite direction, which is we have to make every penny count and how do we save money. And I definitely am more in the indie world, which I enjoy because I think when you have to do that, you actually have to think of creative solutions within the context of your funds. In many cases, find out a better way to do something. So in American History X, John Morrissey brought me aboard. I worked on that in production with a number, of course, Bill Carraro and a number of other people, Mark Catone, the first AD, to craft the film. The director was very spontaneous in what he would do on that film, on American History X. He actually would really had no particular plan that he revealed to people about what he wanted to shoot each day. But uh, on the first day, I believe we did 113 setups for the camera and 27,640 feet of film on the very first day in an area about, oh, I don't know, average apartment in Hollywood size plus a little outdoor parking area. So that's a very small area for shooting that much film. And normally the number of setups one might get in a day might be 20, 15, 20, 25, but not 113. So uh, that was very much a unique, eccentric experience, I would say, in American History X.
Okay, wonderful, Michael. So your Stealing Thunder series became a number one Amazon bestseller. So while you were producing the series, did you were you having that in mind?
Well, the my Stealing Thunder received an award from Thrillspy, and my novel Murder in the City of Light went to number one on Amazon. So a little difference there, but nonetheless, on both those books, going to number one on Amazon was terrific. and uh, very felt very good, certainly as an accomplishment, as well as receiving a prize for Stealing Thunder. And in Stealing Thunder series, which is a number of books, 6 books together, that allowed me to really explore the themes of a particular character and situation. It's a techno thriller, and by that kind of came way of Tom Clancy, who really developed the techno thriller mode. He's the one who would put in not only action genres, ones of a particularly uh, salutary nature towards forward operators and special forces folks, as well as the intrigue behind the scenes from governments and the CIA and FBI, all the secret agencies one has. And that kind of was the start of doing the techno thriller, was a lot of Tom Clancy, which I had read, all of them, pretty much all of his books. And the one with Murder in the City of Light is because I've been to Paris and so many times and thought, well, there's got to be a murder mystery in here somewhere. So that kind of allowed me to go in that direction.
Okay. So what did that moment mean to you personally, seeing your series as number one Amazon bestseller?
Personally, when one gets a number one book on Amazon, you're very excited. It was a lot of work. It certainly seems to be one that has helped me get some attention for making that into a TV series. And I'm very grateful to a lot of the readers out there enjoying the books, and I certainly hope to connect with them more over the years.
Okay, so what inspired you to write techno thrillers, and why do you think readers are drawn to that particular genre?
Well, for one thing, I've always liked action movies, and the notion of thrillers means there are secrets to be revealed. And given that we're in the Hidden Secret studio, that's a pretty strong audience that I think a lot of people feel. And the idea that people want to see new things and or see below the surface is really a key element with humanity. We want a story that, and virtually every story, that has some kind of reveal, whether it's for a person or a character or a plot point, anything like that, that allows us to actually understand and feel better. And I think that's an important aspect of our humanity, that we want to kind of dive into that genre. So I think the thriller one, an action one, really has a great deal of we get the tension of the moment where there's a confrontation, and then we get a feeling of ease when it's resolved. And that's a very deep human emotion that we connect to. And I think that genre, the thriller one in particular, action thriller ones, really exemplify that physical sensibility in embracing story. That's one thing that attracts me to it. I also like a lot of the historical, technical, geographical elements that I get to explore if you have a series that can go in different parts of the world and look at different parts of um, it could be warfare or history or conflict. I'm very fascinated by that.
Okay, so Michael, your novels combine technology, politics, espionage, and suspense. That's a lot of different, let's say, different niche combined in one. So, how are you able to research, combine this different research into creating stories that feel authentic?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand. What was the question? How
How
do
are
I
you
do?
able to? How much of research goes into creating stories that feels also authentic, combining technology, politics, and espionage?
Well, I think that one thing is that you have to do the details. I think a lot of people, those particular series, I think, have a lot to do with the detail. If you are a person, for example, I'm working on a sequel to my novel, Murder in the City of Light. Excuse me. And in doing a detail, I have people doing surveillance. And in terms of doing their surveillance, they really have to explain to people what they're doing. What street am I on? What am I seeing? Where am I at? In one case, we go to a French auction house. And that French auction house in the Rue Droit area of Paris, I believe it's in the second arrondissement of Paris. I have actually been there. Excuse me. I've actually been there in Paris, and I went to that auction house. So capturing that detail really matters to bring the scene alive. Um, Excuse me, I have to cough really bad for a second. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry, Dominic. Something was coming over me there. Um, but I think that having that particular detail is really what matters to the reader, and the notion that they are going to feel like they are there. Not having that detail implies a simpler story, which is, I think, in many ways the opposite of the techno thriller, where one wants to feel those details and really get down to the nitty gritty of the details. If you are a person and you're in a espionage and you want to know how to pick a lock, well, I've learned how to pick a lock because that's part of the feeling that you get from actually doing some degree of the experience. And so doing that with and a number of other things over the years, such as visiting a SEAL base in the United States here in Coronado, near San Diego, and also talking to a lot of people who actually were forward operators or who worked in this particular field. You get a lot of interesting details about them, and sometimes you will hear like, "Oh yeah, that didn't go right, and here's why." And some things are downright silly, um, that they have mistakes that they've made while watching people. In let's say somebody was watching somebody in Moscow, the CIA operating in Moscow during the Cold War, and some of the tricks they've employed to get assets on the ground to work in espionage, particularly against a very vaunted enemy like the KGB, who basically followed almost everybody. So I think adding the details is real key, and to get the emotional element, and also the part where it all fails.
Of course, the part where self-help. So, what is your major challenge when it comes to writing and creating?
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
What is your major obstacle or challenge when it comes to writing or creating?
I think when it comes to writing, that one, if you brainstorm a lot, like I do, I think that what's important is I sometimes think of here's 20 ways to go with this particular scene. So I will have a lot of choices, a lot of possibilities, a lot of, well, what direction do I want it to go in this particular scene? And choosing that can become a bit of a conundrum at times. And I think that having the ability to discern that is number one, what is so different that I've taken the reader asking myself a few questions. What is so different that when I take the reader down this path, that they're going to see something new and I get to explain what it is? Could be fundamentally having talked with a very dangerous gangster in a very elegant restaurant, which I did yesterday. The other is the twists and turns of characters as they change on the character arc to have some reveals and surprises for the reader. So I think it's having so many options these days. A lot of times people don't get things going because they have too many options and they want to keep all the options open. Point of fact, I think a great deal of life is both simpler and more satisfying by actually making a choice and trying to make that choice work in the context after you've decided to work very hard in one direction than anything else. So I think that I wish I had a lot more time. An obstacle would be time, because otherwise, if I could do that, I could write, I don't know, a few book, 2 or 3 books a month would be nice, but it's all about the time. So obstacle as far as time goes is definitely high up on the list, I would say. Um, Software has become much better. and easier to use. And there's a lot of tools out there to use for writing scripts. Use Screenwriter, but I very much like its robust outlining, and also in terms of plotting, just the plot. How do you get the plot and make it easy? And the part is we could get so down into the details too quickly to where now you don't have the big picture of the project or the novel or the script where you want to go. And I use a tool called Plotter, Plottr, and it's basically a big picture kind of cards on the computer that help you lay out the scenes. You can get as detailed as you want, or you can keep it kind of broad, which is nice with those cards moving around the screen. And so I think as far as an obstacle goes, going back to your question, is that sometimes you could look at the detail and get bogged down in the detail, and sometimes you need to go back and forth between detail and the big picture. And I think it's just a matter of, I don't know, decades of practice, and you'll finally get that. Find your own particular path of writing style, if you know what I mean.
Okay, Mike, thank you so much. So, what advice would you give aspiring writers who dream of seeing their stories become films?
I would I would give them advice saying your story needs to be filmic and cinematic. And by that I mean that implied in your work is, and this is a very broad piece of advice, that if you have a story that is cinematic and could be readily read on the page, that translates to a script format, you're really moving yourselves farther along the road there towards having it go up on the screen. There has certainly been plenty of books that are notoriously difficult to translate to the screen, yet they've made it. That's probably required a great deal of human effort. If you look at one particular book, it could be Shogun, the great, which was recently remade as a series, but previously was done decades earlier as a series. That was a huge undertaking in its original format, which I think it was somewhere around 1985 or 80, somewhere in there. And that was a huge undertaking then. But it was very filmic. It was very cinematic. If anything, the scope of a Japanese Englishman in 16th century Japan had a huge scope. So it was very cinematic. And if we go to the other side of the spectrum, you have a book by Albert Camus called The Stranger, L'Étranger, and that in and of itself had very much an internalized conflict, very difficult to portray without a gifted actor and very subtle screenwriting. So I think one is that if someone can read your material and say, oh my gosh, that would make a great movie, both in terms of detail and conflict structure, I think you're well on your way towards at least giving it a good try, good pitch in that direction.
Okay, so tell us what's next for you. Can you give us a preview of your upcoming novels and your upcoming projects?
Well, right now I've got Murder in the City of Light that's out there. That's a book that hit #1 on Amazon. I also wrote a book called Seven Graves to Marrakesh, which is a thriller, action thriller. Kind of follows up with Stealing Thunder series. That's set in Morocco. And so I'm working to push those as TV series and to see what I can get going on those. And I've already scouted Morocco, which was a lot of fun. And as a result, I'm actually working on a thriller sequel to Murder in the City of Light right now as we speak, and pushing that. And I have some projects set in Europe because it's very adaptable now to making even American projects over in Europe, and that seems to be the direction where I'm going to go for a bit. I'm working with some artificial intelligence to get some greater knowledge in that area. And that always seems to be something shifting and changing with a great deal of uncertainty in the film world. artificial intelligence being used instead of visual effects in some areas, more even more extreme, replacing actual actors in films. But I am exploring that because it's happening right now. So I'm checking on that and using animation technology for some hopefully future animated projects, cartoons, and etc. So I've been experimenting and learning more about that as well. So it's kind of a big shopping basket full of directions there, Dominic.
Okay, you actually have a lot going on. So, Michael, here's my final question for you before you go. Is there something you wish I would have asked you, or something you'd like to talk about and share with my audience that maybe I have not asked you that question?
Well, I let's see. I was considering, given the hidden secrets of books title there, that I was thinking, okay, gosh, what? I think Dominic's going to give me a very tough quiz here on the secrets of my books or other books. I
Yeah,
was
most times, some of the guests they don't like to spill. They want people to go and get the book, and
sure.
so
I think it's a some part of that is indeed when we look at books, and that's why I like the hidden secrets of books title there. Is that we see a book and we read it, and we read it at a certain age and time in our life and what we're going through, and then we read it, maybe reread it some years later, a different perspective, time, and age, and we get a different secret out of the same book. How is that? I think that's utterly fascinating that the book isn't changing, the words are still the same, and but the notion that our perspective changes the way we look at the book and the words, and now we have a different secret. And I think that's one of the more fascinating, amazing things about books, about literature, about creativity, where we're the ones changing uh, the perspective on the book, which has not changed. And anyways, I guess that was something about the hidden secret of books that I wanted to bring up. Thanks for asking that, Dominic.
right. Thank you so much. This has been so exciting. Thank you for joining us today. Your journey through Hollywood, publishing, and storytelling reminds us that great stories are built on curiosity, persistence, and the courage to keep creating across different mediums. We appreciate you sharing your experiences from blockbuster films to best-selling novels, and we are excited to see what comes next in your writing and your filmmaking career. So, for those who would like to connect with you and learn more about what you do, and those who would like to get your book, how can they do that?
You can find me and what I'm doing on Creative Explorer-michaelmandaville.com, Creative Explorer-michaelmandaville.com. I'm also active up on X with posts pretty much every day, as well as Facebook. And my books are available on Amazon or directly through my website. And I'd certainly appreciate new readers and happy to keep you informed of what I'm doing, and certainly and hope you have a great journey with my book in hand.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael, and my audience as well. Thank you all so much for listening. And if this episode is speaking to you, share this episode with someone who needs to hear this. An aspiring filmmaker, an aspiring writer as well. And make sure to check out Michael's work. Thank you all so much. And I will see you guys on another episode on the show. Love you guys so much. Have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Dominic. Much appreciated.